we're seeing some big moves in the market lately, and what I do have to say is energy doesn't get burnt or buried, it gets transferred. What is happening with the last couple of months and where people are transferring their energy with property. Stay tuned.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
Billy Drury, the old man stuck in a young man's body. How are you this morning?
Good, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, Sydney put on its biggest fun run on the weekend. 90,000 runners. It's actually the biggest in the world now. The City to Surf, City to Bondi.
Big number, big
Massive
number, big
number.
number. What is that everyone likes? You know what? It's a beautiful run for one, but it's really nice to see a city come together like that, and it just gets better and better.
Yeah, it's the sun run, the fun run. I think running's in trend at the moment, but yeah, it's the biggest in the world and massive, big one for charity. So really important to a lot of local charities. Yeah, it's just good to see everyone out. I didn't participate, but it was hard to miss on the news.
Well done, and good to take our mind off onto something different. Look, this morning I think it's really, really important to have a chat about what people are now doing, how they're pivoting with what's happened with government, with changes in property, with changes in tax and legislation and things like that, which way people are pivoting. I do have to say, I'm starting to. I've lately I refuse to talk about the whinging or the whining, and I'm more focused on the solution of what we're going to be doing. If it feels really good just to shit talk, the budget and and how bad it is, and these recent decisions that have been made, and when you're starting a conversation with a person in business, with a buyer, or a seller, or a landlord, it's quite comfortable to, or embellishing, to actually talk about, look, yeah, that the things that have tightened up or how hard it is. But I've sort of lately really been trying to put my energy to escape that conversation and really tried to work on the actual solution that people need. And that's why they're calling me as a real estate agent. They're calling me to say, look, I'm thinking of buying, or I'm thinking I'm selling, and really focusing on that solution. You know what? You can lose an hour or two a day by that shit talk. And I found much more productive conversations just working on what we can do to get things done with people. Are you finding that, Billy?
I think it's easy as well to take their position and sit on the same fence. If they're already leading in with sort of a negative feeling and sentiment in the market, that's what they're going to want to talk to someone about and almost get confirmation of that. But if you can try and lead them into where the opportunity is, and show them, as you said, where people's newfound energy is being transferred to, I think you'll find it's a more productive phone call at least. So, and that's what we want as an expert and as a voice of the industry. So yes, I suppose the big change this morning we're going to talk about is in June. What they passed was basically a new law that prevents self-managed super funds from entering new limited resource borrowing arrangements, shortened to LBRAs, to acquire residential property in their super funds. Existing residential SMSF loans generally grandfathered. Commercial property and SMSF borrowing remains available, but it's talking about the resi space.
That's a lot of big words in a few paragraphs.
Yes.
So bottom line, I think we can't borrow money within our super if purchasing something from now forward. Again, it's coming back to what do we do now? And
residential.
Resi. So that
Yeah,
you know,
I
if
mean,
you're in, so allow me to give people an example. If you had 400,000 in your super with yourself or with your partner,
yeah,
and you guys decided you're going to go out and borrow 600 grand with your super. So you were going to buy something for $1 million, hypothetical. Go with me on the numbers.
yeah,
You'd buy something for $1 million, and you'd spend the next 20 years with your super money and your rent from that property, paying that mortgage off. That's now been scrapped. With residential, you now can't. You now have to be borrowing it in cash, by the sounds of it.
correct. Yeah, buying in cash, entirely in cash, is still permitted, um, subject to your normal SMSF rules. But yeah, effectively taking the lending part away. And I think in Sydney, let's face it, what can you buy residential for 400k cash? It's that's where it's probably shifted a lot of people into commercial, given they can borrow and buy a bigger asset. And you're selling, the team is selling, we're all selling commercial storage vaults, like double-sized garages in height and width, in volume, and warehouses. And you've definitely seen a pickup in inquiry just in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, here's the exciting bit. When COVID happened, it hit people like a ton of bricks. There was so much change, and I look at it like energy, and I remember saying to the team over and over and over, energy doesn't get burnt or buried, it gets transferred. Energy doesn't get burnt or buried, it gets transferred. Um, and they're like, what do you mean by that? I said, well, we've just got to, like, money doesn't get burnt or buried, it just gets transferred. We've just got to work out how to pivot and how to and where that money's going, and obviously and facilitate those transactions. Now, if you look at what's happened with the government, now people with these changes with super, because there was a fair bit of super purchases and they got a mortgage. Now you're thinking, okay, they've plugged that opportunity out. That's crossed out, not going to happen. What are people going to do with their money, with their super, if they can't borrow money with their super, and there's 400 grand there? So there's going to be, we believe, and keep an eye on this one. I reckon in the years to come, you're going to go, oh my God, you guys spotted it right at the beginning. But keep an eye on this one. Commercial industrial property, you can, if you've got 400 grand in your super, you can still borrow, 70%, 600 grand, 700 grand, with your super, and buy something for 800, 900, $1 million with that 400 grand. So there's going to be this huge move now over with the superannuations buying commercial property. Sure, it's what the government wanted, but I think it's good opportunity, Billy.
I think it complements the self-managed super fund space rather nicely as well. I've personally tried it, so bought a commercial property in SMSF. Generally, if you get the right asset, it's a longer term. It's a long-term hold, but it's a long-term tenant. With your commercial lease agreements, you're finding there's less changeover with tenants. You're generally finding there's less. You're not so much of a property provider in the sense that you're not putting a tenant in and sometimes having to worry about the literal roof over their head in some of these assets. It can be as simple as a concrete box if you're looking at storage. So little less responsibility. The tenants can look after themselves a little bit more rather than being someone in a residential space. So I think it complements that space well.
And you remember what I said before about the energy doesn't get burnt or buried, the energy gets transferred, the cash doesn't get burnt or buried, it gets transferred. I also think, yes, it's going to go towards commercial in a positively way, but I think it's also the hole that it's going to leave in residential is going to force an increase in rents. It's going to force an increase in rents. We had four transactions towards the late end of last week, and people were rushing to be a landlord in their super because they could still borrow money. That's now over. You can't buy today doing that. But Billy, that means there's less landlords naturally coming into the market for residential that are borrowing money in their super. That's got to go.
Yep.
That's less supply in the market. There's always supply leaving the market because people are getting rid of their assets, they're retiring, whatever. That's going to push rents up.
Yeah, there's your net effect. I suppose the easier it is for people to move their money from residential into commercial, I think will be the biggest catalyst as to how much growth we see in that entry level commercial space. My experience, relatively easy. You must have a good accountant for this. Like it'd be a bit of a landmine to navigate on your own. So you need a good couple of professionals around you. But I think the easier it gets in transitioning from A to B, assuming you still want to spend the money, and generally people do because they've come so far. I think it'll benefit nicely.
So, boys and girls, the big one for me is, Billy, what is it?
Net effect, potentially a little bit more pressure on rents in the residential space, less investors in the market, which probably you're not going to see the effect for another few months as effectively the tap has just been turned off. There's your big June changes, SMSF lending.
And all the complaining in the world to the boys and girls, guys and girls, is not going to help us. It's just working with what we've got. And like I said, it's like energy, it doesn't get burned or buried, it gets transferred. Let's just focus where the money's going and just be Johnny on the spot with that. So we have to pivot at the moment. We have to be reactive and responsive. We ain't going to be changing the laws quickly. So let's just work with what we got.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a really good day.
Thanks, Billy Bob. Cheers, mate.
See you.